This Week in Startups is brought to you by GoToMeeting. Meeting is believing. Visit gotomeeting.com. Click the Try It Free button and sign up for a 30-day trial.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Des was the #1 speaker at a lot of our events. He comes to the incubator every year, gives a quick talk, and it's always rated the highest. He's just a really great mind. He's really considered, and he's a really special guest for all of us at the Launch Incubator. So big round of applause for Des Traynor.
Thanks. So I wrote this talk trying to cast my mind back, I guess, a couple of years, and also at the same time look at where we are today in terms of the industry. And what I'm talking about today, it's brand new material, and obviously if you want, as Jay-Z would say, if you want the old material, go to the old albums. But this is all about funnels and specifically how you're going to launch and acquire new customers. So the talk's titled Thinking Through the Funnel. And the reason this is important is I think, the good news for you folks is that I would have a reasonable confidence for those of you for whom, you're primarily an online business that people will hear about via Twitter or any of those sort of areas. You're probably all going to get about 1,000 signups straight away when you launch at Launch Festival or wherever. You'll get the signups, and that's not the way it was in 2007. It's not the way it was in 2010. If you look in recent years, we all remember Yo, possibly remember Meerkat. Some of us remember Secret, Periscope, Whisper. The most interesting one at the moment for me is Peach. So hands up here who's heard of Peach. Hands up here who's downloaded Peach. Hands up who used Peach this morning or today. Right, see? I presume you're an incubator company. The key point for me is that distribution's gotten a lot easier. A lot easier. And, Peach have probably got millions of users, and the challenge for them isn't actually it hasn't proved to be acquisition. They actually have a more fundamental challenge which everyone faces, every business faces. Getting users is not the biggest challenge you'll face. Keeping users is the biggest challenge you'll face. And this was nicely summarized by this Benedict Evans tweet when he said, a cool new messaging app getting to 1 million users is actually the new norm. Getting to 100 and keeping them, that's what separates the groundbreaking businesses from the others. And what will happen is after you launch is some version of this, if you're lucky, you'll be like, yay, everything takes off, we're doing really, really well. Things will go super strong. And you'll have all these different ways people sign up. Some people sign up through search engine marketing or through virality or through content marketing or any of the various things. And they'll all hit your homepage and that's basically what happens. And for those of you who are lucky, you'll be like, okay, well, they actually all signed up and then they disappeared. Or they signed up and they went to, they went through your onboarding and then they turned into shit. Or they went through your trial and they turned into shit. The point being, there's many stages at which it could all go to shit. And that's as true at Series B or C as it is at Seed. So, how do we get to this mythical happy customer? And a lot of people think if we get here, we're done. It's we're on the home straight now, right? That's actually not even it, because it's actually keeping them there as the hard piece, right? Because a happy customer is only ever 3 or 4 clicks away from becoming a former customer or a happy customer of somebody else, right? And so what I'm really talking about here is specifically these arrows, these pieces of how you transition somebody between the gears. And that's actually what the core of your biggest challenge isn't just getting these initial 1,000, because if you get that right, most of you have products that are set up to actually, customers will attract more customers. Word of mouth is a real thing. Word of mouth is now, as Gary Vaynerchuk said, it's on steroids. It's been hanging out with Barry Bonds. It can actually spread pretty quickly. So how do we get people from, say, the homepage to signups? That's the first piece I want to talk about, and it's this idea of marketing the job that your customer does. And I've spoken about jobs to be done before in previous talks, so I'm not going to repeat that material. You can Google the phrase jobs to be done, you'll find a wealth of information about it. the key ideas for me are, a lot of you, your first temptation will be to pitch one of the things. When I go to your website, or when I go to you in the App Store and I read your description, or when you hand me a flyer, or I go see you at an exhibition at a conference, you'll be pitching me on how it was built, or the technologies it uses, or how it's so well designed, or how much money you've raised, or how many features you have, or what incubator you've been in, or what incubator you got kicked out of, or whatever. None of that is actually why people use your product. No one's like, holy shit, a YC company, I better use that calendar app. That's not how it works. What actually happens is people have a job that they need to get done, and you convince them that your product does that job, and then they adopt your product. And if it does that job, they stick with it. So the way you attract qualified traffic in that regard, or attract people who actually want to use your product, is you tell them what it'll actually do for them. This is the biggest frustration I have with people who pitch themselves through the wrong parameters. So like the exaggerated extreme of this is, you run a free iPad Pro competition and say, free iPad Pro to get for everyone who signs up for my app. What will that get you? It will get you people who want iPad Pros. Unless you're selling iPad Pros, that's not a good fucking business proposition, right? Like, you're trying to attract people who actually want your product. So customers come in all shapes and sizes. And the only thing they actually have in common typically is that they have a job they need to get done. It's tempting to think, I own 2 properties, therefore I rent one. If your software is designed to enable that or facilitate people who manage properties, it's very easy to think, oh, well, we're talking about wealthy, upper class, we're talking about this, we're talking about that. That's actually not it. What we're talking about is people who need to manage properties. Demographics are not relevant to that space. They're only maybe useful as a proxy of where should we put our billboards or whatever, but it's nothing to do with how you actually pitch your product.
Just think about all the time and effort and money you spend going to meetings, going across town, getting stuck in traffic from Palo Alto all the way up to San Francisco, out to Oakland, traveling across the country, going to Seattle, going down to LA, back to New York. It is exhausting, and it is a waste of time and money. Most meetings could occur with the help of GoToMeeting, and they would occur flawlessly. I know because I do these meetings all the time. In fact, I've been meeting with a dozen entrepreneurs every week over GoToMeeting, back to back to back, recording these meetings and sharing them back with the entrepreneurs as I give them feedback for when they come to the Launch Festival in March 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, in fact. And I can only do it with GoToMeeting because everybody can use any product they have, computer, tablet, smartphone, doesn't matter what operating system, it just works everywhere. And it is HD quality with perfect HD sound and the ability to share screens. And it never hiccups, it never has bandwidth problems, it just always works. And that to me is the key. If you're gonna do these kind of virtualized meetings, they can't be breaking up and they can't have poor fidelity. They have to be perfect. So here is your call to action. This is what I want you to do right now. I want you to go to GoToMeeting.com and try it free for 30 days. There is nothing to lose. Visit GoToMeeting.com and click the Try It Free button. Do it now and have your first meeting up and running in minutes. It literally works so simple that I have like little Google Calendar Chrome extension where it puts a GoToMeeting button every time I create a meeting, and I just press boop, GoToMeeting, and it generates a code, gives everybody the code, everybody knows the link, boom, and it just works. So go ahead and go to GoToMeeting.com and get your free 30-day trial. It's a great product. I've been using it for years. I love it. It's a pleasure for me to read an ad about GoToMeeting because I don't have to read it because I use it. It's literally on the list of my top 10, 20 products that I use every week. It just makes me super efficient in meeting with entrepreneurs. So thanks to our friends at GoToMeeting. And if you're a super fan of the show, go ahead and thank at GoToMeeting on Twitter. They love to see your support of the program. Okay, let's get back to this episode.
The only thing you should ever focus on is what your product does for people. And I'll give you an example of how we did in Intercom, how we worked this out. So just, to kind of frame of reference, in Intercom we have over 9,000 customers, 66 million in funding. So I say that only to say that this isn't hypothetical. This is literally the way in which we did this. We, as you get this traction, as you get these users, as you get these initial burst of usage, You need to be speaking with these customers and have conversations. And if that sounds like hard work, it is. That's what you signed up for when you accepted a check from Jason. And what we do specifically is you look at the customers from the point of view of who they are. So new customers, why is it they chose to use your product? Churned customers, what did these people think you did that it turns out you didn't do? Trialing customers, what is it they're trialing you for? And there is no data way to do this. You can put in mix panel and heap analytics and everything you want, but you actually have to talk to people. Ideally, you can skip a few steps if you're solving your own problem because you have some natural intuition for sure, but there's still no way away from it. We talked to a shitload of customers. I would say over the course of 4 months, we ran a project where we talked to over 100. We talked to people in all of these categories. Regular active users, what keeps them coming back every day? What problem in their life occurs that has them log into Intercom every single day? What is it they're doing? Inactive. What happened such that the problem went away, but they're still paying us? These are the questions we have, right? And when you know all this, you can basically start to identify the specific reason people actually pick your product up in the first place. The output of our project was, we hired a consultancy to help us do this, was these job boards. And what these job boards are is basically a rough description of the job. Empower me to have the conversation with the right people so I can get better feedback. This is the core of our Learn product in Intercom. And all of this stuff here is like what it's more about. And it's more about qualitative data and talking to users, blah, blah, and what it's less about. And then this is the story, the most archetypical way, or prototypical, I guess is a better word, of how people adopt the product. And once we know all that, we know exactly what we should be saying. This product, did answer an earlier question, this is what led to us splitting Intercom into 4. And then when we knew someone came along for one of these jobs, we have a whole page designed specifically to solve a problem. And we have all the different components, using all the language that customers use, using all the pain points that they related to us, absolutely everything that we had to hit on. We spoke to them specifically in their language that resonated with them. And that is how we design our landing pages. We specifically attract people who have the exact problem that we know we solve well because we've talked to people who use us every day for it. And when you get that beautiful sync between like problem statement and like customer solution, you have a really, really high converting web page, if you like, or in other words, a better business. The second piece is when you have your marketing straight and you're telling people that you can do the things that your businesses can do, you have another challenge, which is taking somebody through onboarding. And when most people think onboarding, they think some version of this, right? They think, the bit where they go after getting signed up. Onboarding is it's kind of quite a vague term for a lot of folks. Onboarding can be what it takes to try out a product, or it can be like buying it and paying for it, or for some people it's getting set up for success, or configuring a product, or adding your friends. There's a lot of different ways to think about it. But for us, it's the moment between expressing an intent to use the product and successful use of the product. Everything in there is onboarding. And most of you are going to design an onboarding experience for March when you go and have the whole world check out your product. And then you're going to continue to ship software, and you're going to continue to improve it and improve it and improve it. And you're never going to look at that onboarding again. And that's probably one of the biggest mistakes you'll make. Because every single time the context of your product changes, your onboarding has to change. And what do I mean by context? Well, I mean like the features you have, or the technologies, or the integrations you support. Every time you're like, okay, now we have a Facebook integration. It's so easy to forget that we should go back to onboarding and see if they want to connect to Facebook at step 1, but they probably effing do. Same with the environment, like if technology changes, if Apple releases a different size phone or whatever, like all these things will change. Same with your audience. If you expand the scope, if you add another type of audience, or another type of people who want to read your content, or another type of content entirely. Same with your packaging, same with your pricing, or how you present advertisements, or any of that sort of stuff. Every time there's any small change here, there is going to be an equivalent change in how you should onboard people to be successful customers of your product. And like the one thing I can't stress this enough is like, we talk about all these customers, the only thing that you can guarantee they'll all do is onboard. It's the one flow that you have a 100% hit rate, right? Everybody tries to sign up, they get here, and yet you spend all your time over here working on all these features that no one's ever going to fucking look at because they don't get here. It's like fundamental to be constantly thinking about onboarding. We have an entire team called customer acquisition. It's like a product manager, 3 engineers, an engineering lead, 2 designers, and their only concern in this world is onboarding. And it works. One thing you should consider when you look at your onboarding is the difference between optimizing and redesigning. So most people will tell you that the former is the right thing to do. You should just optimize the shit out of stuff. They're wrong, but they're only correct in a small set of circumstances. Optimizing is something like a black hole, and you'll get sucked into a black hole of optimization when you spend most of your time like, oh, a different shade of red. Oh, let's just try one more shade of red. Okay, there we go, we got the right shade of red. Like, you're literally tweaking your product. Where, you know, a handful of people in Minnesota have a mild bias towards this little shade of red, and that's where you're going to rejig your entire product around, as opposed to asking more fundamental questions. The way I think about it is, you've like, how much has your product or your context or your audience changed? Little or lots? And then, how is your onboarding currently working? Is it working well, or is it working badly? And that lets you ask things. Optimization is a great strategy when very little has changed about your product and it's kind of working well. That's when the tweaks make sense. That's when you can actually get those, like, you know, play around with those knobs, work out like what flow or what wording or what copy or what button. That's when it makes sense. If lots have changed and your onboarding isn't working, obviously you want to redesign. So the other 2 states are interesting. What if it's working well and lots changed? Well, I would argue if lots changed and you think it's working well, there's probably a way to make it work even better that you have yet to consider. And I'll give you a very simple example of that shortly. Similarly, if something's not working, obviously you should be considering redesign. You won't tweak your way from a shitty experience to a good one. You know, usually it's a ground up reconsideration. So to give you an Intercom example, back in 2011, 2012, to install Intercom involved writing all of this code basically and adding it to the footer of your product everywhere you wanted it to go. And this is like the Ruby code you'd have to write, but obviously your language may vary. And our definition of what onboarding looked like to get somebody from expressing an intent to use to successful usage, the way we thought about it was we need to help people install the JavaScript correctly. So this was where we were like, okay, this is what we need to do. And we went down the optimization path. So this is literally what we launched in July 1st, 2011. This was it. Like, obviously the brand is all over the place. We boasted about things like having no API. Today we boast about things like having an API. But this was where we started, right? And this code was on the homepage. And over time we're like, right, it seems like we keep hitting the wall. We get all this traffic and it hits the wall. What can we do to get us a little bit further along the way? So in 2012, we're like, okay, let's try and convince people they can do it quick. Let's tell them it's 30 seconds. And it is 30 seconds if you are on crack, right? But we also kind of made it easy. We gave all these, you can see like Rails, Django, ASP, etc. So we kind of offered all the languages up front that you could do, so you could flick between and get the pre-written code. We made the steps more obvious. We tried to simplify it a bit because we came to the conclusion that it got more complicated the more stuff we showed. So we said, let's just have a switcher. And that gave us a little kick. And all these things gave us a little kick in conversion. 2014, this is probably when we hit our pinnacle of, like, you know, you can see now we have all the languages are back again. We have an engineers and a business person thing. We've got hang out with us in our install chat room, watch our install video. We also have an email address somewhere as well. We have the code and we have this status bar, right? We have basically optimized every fiddly bit we can, and every one of these little things got us one extra piece, right? And that was the local maximum of that. However, at the same time in our product, in unrelated news, people were consistently saying to us, hey guys, I'm delighted I installed the code, all my active users are there, but come here, I have all these other users and they haven't appeared in Intercom yet because they're not using the product. Would it be possible if we could add like a CSV of users? So we're like, sure, we should go and build that feature. So we built that feature. We changed the technological capability of Intercom. And as a result, we're like, well, now we need to reconsider the onboarding. Because we've changed the feature, we now need to look at onboarding. So we had built this flow, which is you can import CSVs and tweak stuff around and all that. But we realized that, like, the reason they wanted to do this was because they actually wanted to get their users into Intercom. So we reconsidered what this was. It's not about JavaScript, actually. It's about how do we help people get their users into Intercom. So we reconsidered the whole thing. And then when we had that challenge, we were like, oh, well, why don't we have this import users from CSV? Is that not an easier way to get started for a lot of people who can't write code? Specifically useful when you're targeting marketers as a demographic, if you like, right? What we saw was it worked. Here, our conversion rate was 30%. Here we added CSV, and then our conversion rate was 45%. So that's, like, depending on how you want to hear your data, that's a 50% improvement in conversion rate, right? And what was interesting was we weren't actually cannibalizing our existing sign-up. The code people were still doing code, but we added in this whole extra layer of business from simply reconsidering what it meant. And in the dark nights, I like to think about where we'd be, because our trajectory is strong, but think of how strong it could have been, And we have a whole team to think about this. What are we missing? What are we missing, right? And it's also worth saying that these redesigns, and that this one's only a year old or so, but here we are here today. We have these two options. And we've iterated on these, so now it's not just CSVs, it's importers, right? You can import from Stripe, you can import from Mixpanel, so you can integrate with Stripe, you can import from anywhere else you want, right? We've taken this one to its local maximum. But in other news, we also launched this new product, Acquire, and what Acquire is, it takes this messy code snippet all the way back to this. And the great thing about this is there's no code here at all, so we don't need engineers at all. So now you can see that we have a piece of code that works on any page. It doesn't need to be in a product. You just need to copy and paste it. It is exactly as, say, Google Analytics, right? But again, it's caused us to reconsider. So it's not about getting their users into Intercom anymore. It's about how can they quickly see the magic of Intercom, and the most quick way. So it doesn't have to be users, because now you can install this and have live chats with your customers straight away. And this is just consistent reconsideration of the fundamentals of what it means to get started with Intercom. And I've given you some quantifiable data there that shows you exactly the raw impact this has on business. It is significant and not to be ignored. Now, you'll get people in, but they're going to be on a trial. Now, and based on even the few I've seen so far, you're going to have some version of this. You're going to say to me, Des, we don't have a trial. There's always a fucking trial, okay? It doesn't have to be money. Someone is always trying out your app. Everyone tried out Peach, right? There's always a trial. Just don't think that because you don't have a credit card wallet, it's not a thing. And a trial has a state, right? So the idea is pre-sign up, trial starts and ends, and then out spits a customer or a failed customer, basically, right? Let's talk about what's actually going on here. So here's our trial start and end. Why do we do trials? Well, trials attract customers. Why do they attract customers? Well, because it lets them assess the value before they spend. And they're attracted to this before they spend time or attention or money, whatever we want to phrase it. But when they get to the end of this trial, there's a decision point. And that decision point is basically, do I see the value, right? Should I keep using this? It's been 3 weeks, I've gotten nowhere, or they're about to charge me $49. Do I really want to do it or not? And you'll hear the reasons. There's always the same stuff. What you'll never specifically hear is your product isn't good enough. That's very, very rare that people actually say that. Usually what you hear is some version of these things here, which all net out to the exact same excuse, basically, which is, I don't see the value. They've done, whether they're cognizant of it or not, they've done the calculus in their head, and they've sort of said, how much time will it take to use this thing? How much money will it cost me? And is it greater or lesser than the benefit I'm going to get from using it? So they will convert if the product does what it is they want. The most common question I get whenever I talk about this topic is I get this from talking to a lot of startups, a lot of Intercom customers as well. It's like, how do I know what they want to achieve in the trial? And it's that weird sort of human phenomena where, like, in the same way you listen to, there's like late night radio shows where people phone in and they're like, oh, what's wrong with my girlfriend or my boyfriend? And they'd rather talk to the entire city about their problems than be like, well, maybe I should ask them. It's similar with people with their customers. You'll all sit around saying, what do the users want? And I'm like, if only somebody built a tool that would let you ask them. So a great way to work out what people are trialing your product for is to ask them, what are you trialing your product for, right? Shock horror. It's shocking I have to say that, but at the same time I feel like I have to say it. A simple way to do this is to talk to them. Like, what? Hey Michelle, what would make this a successful trial for you? And Michelle will explain, and she'll say something like, oh, I'd like to send newsletters. And you're like, oh, Michelle would like to send newsletters. We know how to help her do that. Or, and there will be plenty of examples. In this case, whoever this user is, Nick would like to use this as a CRM. G would like to use this as to convert more paid. And you'll eventually get all this, right? Now, sadly, the most common thing that you'll do, specifically those you're targeting businesses, you're like, okay, we know all these people are trying to do all these different things. Let's hit them all with the same day one email, right? And their goals are totally different, and yet you're hitting them all with the same thing. And basically, every time you've received an email that's telling you to do something that you've no fucking interest in doing, it's because you're on some drip campaign for something where they literally don't have a clue what you are or what it is you're trying to do. The right thing to do is not this, which is just treat all, you do the whole, what I would call like the one size fits none approach to customer marketing. But consider instead actually speaking to people about what it is they're trying to do. Maybe you actually identify these different things and target them. So if somebody wants help with newsletters, put them on the email marketing course. If somebody wants to talk about CRMs, put them on the CRM course. When you speak to people about the stuff they want to do, they're far more likely to open, read, click, act, convert. That's, it's not rocket science. So when you actually get to know these users, you can split them up into the different types of people you have. You know what their definition of success is. So now you have a fair idea of what stages you need to go through to boost conversions. Well, you should start messaging users, or if you want to send newsletters, what should you be doing? You should be creating a template. That's step one. And for those who get left behind, like per George, Ryan, and Max, and Ashley and stuff, you can actually have conversations with those people. You can say, hey, you've been trialing us for 6 days. You haven't created a template yet. The next thing to do is a template. Here's a video, here's an article, here's a help doc, whatever is necessary. But you can help nudge them along the way. You will lose some. There's no magic, there's literally no 100% conversion rate in business. But in general, you're going to see a significant kick in your trial conversion, which is the hardest lever on a B2B SaaS business, right? And it keeps going. It's not just one email. You have to actually think about what is, at the end, definition of success, and how can we break it into steps people can actually take. And when they come out the far side, the idea will be, when they hit this, ideally you'll have converted them in such a way so that they'll actually get there, right? And I think not enough people think about designing the trial period. And like I said, there's always a trial period, whether it's 28 days or whether it's I'm just going to try this product out for a while with my friends. There was always a trial period. If you work out what it is people are hoping to achieve, find out that question. They're happy to tell you. They're not, most people, and this is more true in B2B, it's slightly less true in B2C, but most people don't sign up for software for fun, right? It's only weirdos like us that do that. Most of the world actually have other things to be doing. So when they sign up for your product, it's because they think it's going to do something to help them. It'll help them find a dentist, or it'll help them record a video, or it'll help them do any of those things. So then, I guess the last piece, which is where most products genuinely fall down, is they think that once customers out of trial, it's done. It's a done deal. We're home and hosed. If you're not aware what's happening next with your customers, you'll basically, the phrase I often use with B2B SaaS companies is you'll fall asleep at the cash register. You're basically just tired, swiping cards all month. You're taking all this revenue for granted. And you don't realize it's too easy to ignore and just assume that a recurring $79 a month customer will recur for 18 months because that's what your model says. The reality is never that. The reality is that they'll recur until they find a better product, they get bored, the use case disappears, they get promoted, somebody else does it, somebody else gets hired, whatever. You should always be in touch with the behavior of your user base, genuinely. And there's just patterns you should see. New users should become more active over time. They should hit some level of activity, right? Somebody signs up, over time they're going to add more projects, more videos, more friends, more whatever it is, more orders, more content to read. You should see activity increase over time. Regular users should stay active, right? Ideally they'd expand, but at the very least they should stay active. But when you see this, and the problem isn't that people look at this graph and ignore it, it's that they have no way to think about what this graph would look like, right? Again, a common question I have is how do I define activity? Those line charts are great, Des, but what the hell actually is the variable? What is the axis there? The answer is look at your best customers and look for what the behavior they have. The field this is in is like emergent metrics, which is when you look at historical data of your best performing users, what it is that they're doing. Are they sending a lot of messages, adding a lot of friends, uploading a lot of photos, recording a lot of videos, tweeting a lot of links, whatever it is. You'll find those from there. And I guess the other piece is when you see someone slipping away, it's like, especially like if I told you, oh, like your $9,000 a month customer is leaving, you have two options. You can spam the shit out of them to try and get them to come back, right? That's probably not going to work, right? Now, if you have a high touch relationship, it might work because you can actually get in and get talking to them and go back and re-warm up the lead. But your best bet is actually learn. Because, you know, if I told you like, you know, there's a whole flood coming through this hole and there's like water's dropping them down drop by drop, the solution isn't like, let's catch each of the drops, which is what you'd be doing by trying to reach out individually one by one and solving this problem. The solution is plug the gap, right? And the best way to do that is to work out what it is, what was the series of events that caused them to want to switch away from your product or stop using your product. And when you know what that is, that's the core problem. Is it that they're looking at other competitors? Why? Because you don't have this feature, or because competitors' marketing is better, or their UI is cleaner, or like they're getting pitched at a lower price or whatever, but understand the root cause. It's not enough to say we're dealing with retention because we're emailing people. You have to actually learn. There is literally no single message that will alter the course of your business. And anyone who says otherwise is, I swear to God, selling you some shit, right? It is a single mindset, however, and it's the mindset of learning how to get people more engaged, learning how to stop people from quitting. That's the actual attitude. That's the same reason, as I said, we have a growth team that consistently learns how can we convert people better. It's a mindset. People are like, this is an industry, specifically, like, I guess, email marketing automation. It's an industry of like people selling like cheap, hacky, shitty tactics. Like this one mail will convert more people. Bullshit, right? That's not how the world works. You need to actually learn, evolve, improve, adapt. And so when you see patterns like this, you have to learn, like, what do they switch to? Why do they get bored? When did it get expensive? They knew the price. If the price didn't change, why did it suddenly become expensive? Or what are they doing instead? Like what behavior, if they were recording videos every day, what are they doing now? Like they must have switched to something. Maybe it's Angry Birds or maybe it's Twitter, but like you lost that customer to something. So the closing point I leave, because I genuinely, like, even for the snippets I've seen and I looked at a couple of the websites here, you're all going to get some traction. It's what you do with it that matters. And I hope that's been useful to you. If you want the slides, you can drop me a mail, just des-slides at Intercom, and you'll get them straight back. I'm Des, and I'm happy to take any questions from any of you.
When are you asking users too much when are you asking users to do too much definition of what your product is? Obviously, you had Steve Jobs on one hand who said the users don't know what they want, and I'm just going to give them, down from the mountain, the tablets, as it were. And then, in other talks you've given, like you could get into making edge caseware, where somebody really wants this feature, but you're kind of making customized stuff. What's the art of knowing when to listen and when to ignore, and how to build an organization that knows how to process all of that? Because I know in our organization, once we put Intercom on, now, oh my God, what do we do with all this information, right? Like, how do you make sense of it all? Talk a little bit about how organizations can deal with that phenomenon of too much feedback.
Sure. So the one thing I'd say is, like, I really like the area in which I do believe Steve Jobs is correct is like the initial definition of the product. And that's why, I hinted at this earlier, but like I personally fundamentally struggle to believe that people can solve a problem they don't understand, and I believe that the best understanding will come from experience of the problem. And if you look at the best and brightest companies, they've always had a first-hand experience of the problem. It's really where, like, I just couldn't solve, I couldn't do an accountancy app with all the contacts and funding and whatever. I just don't care about accountancy. I've never done accountancy. It's just not my area. And like, you'll hear folks like the lean startup people say, like, oh, well, get out of the building, do this research, do all the, follow all these like Six Sigma methodologies and all that sort of stuff. I don't buy it at inception. So like, in my opinion, you have to start with something you actually understand at its core yourself. That's stage one. So I would never like go and say, well, given that I'm going to do a startup, let me talk to some customers. I think you have to start with a product that solves a problem that you understand. No. Where we went and talked to customers, and where I think it makes a lot of sense, is you have to be careful when you follow that. And that's kind of like to say, like, the base camp, or a lot of the ideologies will say, like, solve the problem you understand yourself. The danger is you will take that too far, and you'll do one of two things. You'll overfit your own circumstances. So you're like, no one could ever have more than 4 people on a team because we don't, and that's like not smart, right? Like, because you're over-solving for your specific circumstance. But more generally, you'll market it badly, because you're going to say it solves your problem. But what you need to hear from customers is actually the broader definition of what it actually does. So in our case, we built Intercom to help us see and talk to our users. And that was literally our statement of the problem as a small little side project app, right? And we built Intercom as a spin out of this, right? And if we said see and talk to your users, we're like, that resonated with us, and it resonated with early stage folk, because they're like, yeah, I want to see, everyone here wants to see and talk to your users, right? You don't have like tens of thousands of them just yet, or most you don't. However, when we looked at how Intercom was going to get adopted in larger companies, see and talk wasn't a job. There's no like chief see and talk officer in a company. So we were like, all right, well, how does this play out? So we're like, well, what are you actually doing? And they're like, well, in our case, we're using Intercom to reach out to people to help them get on board. And they're like, all right, so, and what's your job? And they're like, well, I'm a growth marketer or whatever. Like, oh, okay, right, got it. So we started to realize that engaging users was the thing. And then someone else is like, well, I don't actually talk to users, I just like reply to them. We're like, all right, so what are you actually doing there? Like, well, I mostly do support. And we're like, oh, so support's a job. So without changing the product, what we're allowed to do is change how we speak about the product to speak to our customers in their, like, if you like, vertical specific use case. And that was kind of how the product evolved from there. So that's kind of, there's things you'll learn. Like, for example, like the CSV example is a simple one of like, we never had that problem because like we obviously were working off our own database and we're all engineers and stuff. But like from talking to users, it's like, is it a philosophical product opinion that you can't add CSVs full of users? Absolutely not. Right. That was just something that we never experienced, right? So I think
that came directly from listening.
Precisely. Yeah. 100% from listening, right? Not even
50% increase in people converting.
Mm-hmm. Just from working out what was stopping people trying to use the product.
What's the next thing that you missed?
We don't actually, we're running a test right now, and I hope to come back here and tell you it's another 50% kick. Obviously, the kicks get smaller as the business gets bigger. But there's going to be plenty more. Like, and it's all there. Like, there's 8,000 conversations happen in Intercom every week. I guarantee it, there's more shit in there that we're missing, right? Like, and we have a research team whose job is to find this stuff.
Right. But do you have any process by where you look at ideas, right? Because everybody's got ideas of what's going to be the silver bullet, the magic bullet, and then predict the performance of those ideas. So, for example, you have the CSV idea, and you have, the competing idea of help desk, right? And so you have this big internal debate at Intercom, whatever company, and say, gosh, the CSV is going to take us 2 months of developer time, and the building the help desk stuff and having help desk tickets is going to take us 2 months. Which should we do first? Do you do any sort of system to look back on what people's opinions were and which one they prioritized, and then which one was right, so you can do better predicting? Yeah,
so there's a few parts to that question. So one is our growth team, who are actually, our whole product team is based in Dublin. Growth is here in San Francisco because they sit with sales and marketing. And they're engineers, designers, and PMs and stuff. Their concern is growing the business, right? So and I'll get to the master level point in a second, but it's a mistake. CSV importing, which could potentially be huge for the business, and turns out it was, should never be fighting with a new type of email feature or something like that, right? Because they're two very different things. One of them's got to do with how business grows on its current thing, and the other one's got to do with the capability of the product. And it's really hard if the entire team was just had to ask those questions and have these fights. Obviously, growing the business will always win, right? Because that's the numerically strong thing to do. And only when we feel like we're totally tapped out would we go back and add a feature.
Which was what Facebook did.
Precisely. Yeah, absolutely. And
Uber now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both of them share that in common, which is pound growth and forget about additional features.
Yeah, totally. And I think maybe not unifying characteristics, because Facebook have certainly they kind of exploded that left nav with every other feature they can think of now, right? But yeah, they did for a while. Shamat's team was just 100% growth.
Yeah, in fact, getting the next 10 smartphones working and getting the next 10 markets working were better than adding check-ins.
Yes. Absolutely. And
You were going to say it before I cut you off, though.
Oh yeah, no.
Chamath.
So I agree with that. So and like so obviously social capital are investor in us, and our growth team actually works with social capital quite a bit now. We've kind of, we're bigger than any other of the portfolio growth teams, but it's been a huge influence on us. But I think the biggest lesson I'd say there is a separation of concerns, because we still build a product, but growth still happens. You know what I mean?
So how do you separate those concerns as the founder?
So it's a good question. The short answer is you do what you always do, which is you put VP product who worries about the capability of the product, and like a director of growth in our case, who worries about any new potential ways to grow the company. And that's how you separate them in that regard. Your original question about measuring or predicting things, so we're going to probably ship a new product this year, another one on the platform, and that comes equal parts intuition. We have this problem. It's something we need to solve. Research, our customers are asking for this, or they're asking around this space. And then, we will, these days, we'll also look at well, if we price it at X, how would it look? If we price it at Y, how would it look? And then you can kind of get a back of the envelope sort of sense of what the value of the business is. And I would say in the case of Acquire, our live chat thing, that turned out to be way bigger for whatever. I think we probably underestimated the new market we were opening, but it's okay if that happens. But I think, in general, we're not, we're very data informed, but not at all data driven. I think a lot of product stuff still comes back to
you take it all in, and then you have to make a gut decision as a founder that this is the right decision, and it's the decision that we want to do next, that we want to see in the product. So there is, what percentage is each? What percentage is it now with 200 people? Data-driven versus gut-driven? So just as a side, there's a whole post on our blog about roadmaps, so it touches on this a lot, but I'll give you the quick summary, which is we have 5 inputs into what we build. There's what do we want to build, which is just pure intuition. It's just I know that, so we added an emoji to our product. No data whatsoever will tell us that's a good idea. Zero. But it was a good fucking idea, Now, I can tell you philosophically why we did it, because we believed that it's all about personal communication and emojis taking off, and we thought that's how we'll make it seem personal. But the data doesn't support it, so whatever. Screw the data. We knew it was a good idea. So that's one type of thing. Features to help us scale. So if someone starts growing at Intercom, hey, we need teams and we need priority routing, or whatever. If that's not a philosophical problem for us, we'll be okay, we're not going to lose customers over this, so we need to add it. Now, we prefer to do that once we understand the problem ourselves. So once we're hurting from it. As product quality, we need to make this thing better, or this flow sucks, or that thing's ugly. There is, let's see, what else is there? There's 2 more. One of them is, I guess, bugs, just fixing shit that's broken. That's always to avoid tech debt. And then the last one is product iterations. So every time we roll out a feature, like you saw even with the CSV importer, that didn't stop it being a CSV, it became an importer to all these things. So we always iterate on a winning thing, and we always kill a thing that's not working out. And I think a lot of people underestimate, I believe 2 things. I believe don't repeat your tricks if you're a magician. So but I also believe that if you have something that's working, finesse it, make it amazing. Pound it.
Yeah, pound it, basically, right. Yeah. So and I think a lot of people, they'll ship something oh yeah, that cool, that coupons thing really took off. Anyway, what do we do next? And I'm go back to the fucking coupons thing. There's more in that. You didn't get it right the first time, So so we balance our roadmap against those 5 inputs. And I think every product that we talked about there, the 4 of them, they're each actually separate product teams in Dublin. They're their own group of 15 people or whatever. And
so there's a little bit of sense of ownership there, and they have their own resources to rev on it, so they don't get pulled off of it to do growth.
They don't. No one, only growth is growth,
right.
And growth doesn't do anything else. So, then for each of the teams, it's kind of, if a product's early stage, it's going to be all what we want to build. But when you have say IBM or using us for email marketing or whatever, we don't get to be let's reimagine email or whatever, because we're no, this is actually a significant line of business for us. So
we can't lose this client.
Yeah. So and we're even cognizant of that in the manner in which we change the behavior of the product. We're let's first of all give it to 20% of people. Let's give it to so we keep a trusted testers group who are people who get a discount of Intercom, but the deal is we're going to give you a lot of shit. You're not going to get to keep all of it, because we might at some point take it back if it's a bad idea. But all we want from you in exchange is feedback, and that's about 2,000 people, and that kind of gets us great feedback on stuff that we're not sure we want to do yet, but we want to hear about it.
Okay, if you have a question, raise your hand, and I'll run the microphone over. Who's got a question for Des? While they're thinking of their questions, I'm just going to ask you, if you go back in time to when you were a 5-person company, 10-person company, what did you really fuck up in that first year that you could say, God, if we had just fixed this, aside from the CSV file?
Yeah.
What would you want to change and go, gosh, Des, 2011, 2012, we should have done this, and God, I won't make that mistake going forward or my next startup?
I think I would have rathered we did the growth team sooner.
Really?
Yeah.
At what point did you wish you did it?
So I
Day
think
one, day 100?
Yeah. I think start of year 2. So 365 days in or whatever. I think that would have been a good time. When we knew we had a product and we knew we had an abandonment issue, what we did was every now and then we'd dip in and have a look, and we wouldn't really get anywhere. But there's a real danger in working like that, which is specifically you don't get longitudinal knowledge or ownership. So it's a different person dipping in each time, so they're retrying all the old shit again. Whereas when you have someone who literally owns those screens, they get to run longer term things and see much and they build up this whole corpus of knowledge about how the whole thing works. Whereas I think when we have you're a new engineer, why don't you have a pop at this? Oh, you're a designer, why don't you have a go at it? Everyone's kind of retreads the same ground basically. Oh, well, maybe we should simplify the JavaScript. Let's put it in a different font. It's all that. None of that mattered. Nothing actually really mattered until we actually put a growth team on. Everything else was super incremental.
It takes a certain amount of time for the growth team to get the legs underneath them, right? What do you think that is for a startup, for them to, whether they're using MailChimp or Optimizely or Intercom or any of these tools, or Google Analytics, Chirpy, whatever it is, they have to kind of get their legs under them and understand it and put all that infrastructure in place and be able to communicate it to management. What's a reasonable amount of time in days or months for a startup with 5, 10, 15, 20 people to get their growth team set up for growth? Do
you mean from the point of view from time between when they hired the people?
When they hired them to
when they actually have an impact. It kind of it's been my experience that every single product, including all of yours, without even looking at them, has lots of low hanging fruit. So I think you can see impact real quick.
Yeah. So you'll see it in the first quarter.
Yeah. One thing I would say is the staffing of your growth team. Yes, there's an intercom in there, or you want somebody thinking about it from that point. But you need engineers, designers in there as well. Because growth is a product. Your acquisition, your onboarding is a product, just like your product is, and it deserves as much love and attention. And this is the whole don't ever compete on resources sort of thing. If growth have a good idea, that's a massive lever in your business. If that can't happen, you're not being smart, And I know, obviously the concern is, well, we only have X engineers and we struggle to hire. All that's true. But all that said, you still need, you should have somebody whose core consideration is, and they should be capable of impacting real change. Not I fixed a typo on the sign-up form and sign-ups went up 0.0001% or whatever, but real shit, as in I added a new way to import users, or I added a way to sync your camera roll live so that every photo goes in there. It's that's real stuff that affects growth. Tweaking colors isn't. It affects it, but it's you're not Facebook, so an incremental change caused by a gradient is just not.
Yeah, it's the famous Marissa story at Google. Yeah. She changed the blue, and then all the designers quit, and it made a whatever BIP change, and guess what? Nobody in the history remembers it, and now she's over at Yahoo, and maybe that strategy hasn't helped over there.
Yeah, it's possible. I think you need, the biggest thing people don't get is even if you take, say, the Gmail lesson, which I believe in her case, it did make a change, and if you take Gmail's entire user base, that change probably meant 500,000 extra people did something or whatever. No one here is working that scale.
Right.
So even basically the significance of the work you have to do roughly correlates with the significance of the impact you'll get. That CSV import was not an overnighter. It wasn't a log into Optimizely and configure an extra thing. It was a lot of engineering work, and it paid off with a 50% kick. And that's honestly, again, people are too much in the business of selling magic bullets. It's not a magic bullet; it's a lead bullet. It takes a lot of time to make. It costs a lot of money. Sledgehammer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like chopping wood. Mm-hmm. Okay, question.
So I think I remembered from one of your previous talks that you used to sign up for your own product once a week. Mm-hmm. Do you still do that? And how does the mindset work? Because 6 months in, you've seen this thing a million times, right? Mm-hmm.
So do I still do it? No. That advice is kind of that advice was, I guess, mostly targeted towards startups such as yourselves who don't have a growth team yet. In which case, I'd still say yes, you should. The mindset works mostly. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. If I was to give the non-punchy version, I'd be build a full cognitive model of all the features and capabilities and what you want an ideal user to be, and then think about all the steps that are necessary, and then sign up for your product and assess how much you're encouraging to do the right things, right? Another thing would be ask your friend to sign up for it if your friend is a target user. But the key mindset is one of consistently revisiting assumptions, because technology, the ground moves so fucking quickly that the idea that like what was right in 2014 is right in 2016 is just so likely wrong. Or if it is true, then your product has not evolved in 2 years, and you should be asking other questions at that point.
Another question?
So you mentioned startups like us who don't have a growth team, right? So how big is your growth team right now?
I would say about, let me think, it's probably about 12 or 15 people or somewhere like double digits.
7-8% of your company.
Yeah, about that, yeah.
Okay, so 12, 15 people. So can you just describe going from 0 to 1 versus going from 1 to 12?
Sure. We actually went from 0 to 2. So we actually had a labs team, which was the predecessor of the growth team. And labs were to work on experimental stuff. They were supposed to work on, earlier I was saying, the stuff, we'll just build whatever the hell we want to build. So they worked on things like video calls and stuff like that for us, which those ideas have actually come to fruition, but we realized that it does not make sense to build something in labs and try and test it there and then hand it to product. That transition didn't work. So we were trying to do the same separation of concerns, but this building it to test it and building it to use it are two different mindsets. So we basically decided not to do labs, and at the same time, one of the features labs had built, irony of ironies, was a CSV importer, and that was actually how the whole thing evolved. We went from 0 to 2. It was Ben and Patrick, and then I think the next time we brought somebody over from Dublin, and that brought it to 3, and impact continued to happen. Then at one point, mid 2014, we actually sent over 3 engineers from Dublin to SF, because basically we were still like hiring engineers in SF at a good caliber is still incredibly hard. So we flew over 3 for like 3 months, and they worked on a variety of projects, which was kind of like each of them was very impactful. And then we're like, right, we definitely need to do this. Let's next time we raise, let's go hard on hiring engineers in SF, and that's what we did. And that's where we are today, like 12, 15, whatever.
Great question. Yeah. Okay. Final question? Final question.
Usually growth teams are all around trying to do the fast hacks, like they call it growth hacking.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you put in some investment. Like, is that true? And how much investment are you putting into new features?
When you say investment, what do you mean?
Like time and resources.
Into growth?
Yeah, into growth.
Yeah, so we actually put in significant, it's a 16-person team. I think it's 16. I'm just trying to count it in my head as I was thinking about it there. There's a post in our blog called Growth Hacking is Bullshit, right? And I genuinely and this is a controversial opinion, but and we've had the arguments or the discussions with Sean Ellis, who's cool, and he's done a lot of great work. But the idea that folks like you should spend your time tweaking your sign-up buttons and your copy, you've neither the volume, the throughput to do it, but also if you want to talk about A/B testing, why don't we A/B test what engineers could fucking build versus tweaking button colors? And you'll find there's a massive difference there in that A/B test. You're creators, you're innovators, you're people who literally build things. You're not people who play with button colors. From our perspective, a growth team is built to be someone who can create meaningful change in behavior of users. And meaningful to me doesn't tweak on micro variables, it tweaks on macro changes.
So that core value proposition of the product, most startups will start tweaking the onboarding, but they'll onboard people more effectively, and then those people don't get enough value from the core value proposition.
Yep.
And that's the issue.
Yep.
Is that core value proposition so powerful that the person can't live without it, or is willing to pay for it, or uses it every day? So when you gave an example of Peach earlier, it was they figured out how to get everybody talking.
Yep.
They got me to spend 15 minutes adding my friends, and I haven't opened it since. Because the core value proposition was no different for me than Twitter or Facebook.
Yep.
It was pretty much the same. I was like, oh wow, you added one feature. I can do the battery level.
Right.
I can share my battery level.
Thank God.
And I was like, what people need to know.
No, totally. And so if you think about it, right, so if you're a growth team in Peach, right, you can split it down the middle. Some people will literally be like, well, what we need to do is send more push messages to boost retention, and we need to send more emails to work out all this sort of stuff. Or it's or you can look at it as every product is a cost-benefit analysis. For Jason, the cost of having another app to launch every day does not outweigh the benefits, outweighs the benefits
battery sharing does not enough for me to open it up.
It's not an everyday use case or whatever, right?
But it did capture people's attention that, you could type a quick key and share a piece of data. So there's some core there, like if I typed weather or
there's a repurposable
battery.
principle.
Yeah, so there was a repurposed principle that captured people's imagination for a brief moment, just like Secret had it too, which was, oh yeah, you can share something with your address book. That will ruin somebody's life in most cases. But you could have this amount of discussion with your friends without, then play the game of which friend said what.
Secret were, like, in my opinion, like slightly, like, I agree for sure. And Secret were, like, almost doubly unlucky in that they didn't, like, have the whole launch and crash thing. They actually had the launch and some sort of, like, false traction, and then bad press, and then just kind of general, this has just turned into boredom and people whinging. Like, there was probably, this is where all the funding came from. Like, there was a good 2-month period where we were all convinced this is the next Twitter, like. Well,
they valued it like the next Twitter, totally. And they got into a VC bidding war to the point where they were able to take millions of dollars off the table as founders in the second year and buy Ferraris. Yeah, always a red flag.
For like a 4-month iPhone app, like,
Yeah, and you're like, okay, it's growing incredibly, but it really is interesting how investors didn't even think for a second, have they gamed the onboarding and this like initial engagement, but there's not lasting value here?
There's genuinely something I've been thinking about a lot, like, and I can't work out a right way to blog this or speak about this, but like, there is a thing, like, if you take growth hacking as we just defined it there, right? I actually think there's a thing you could do, and I'd love to run it in some parallel universe called like investor hacking, which is there's a certain type of investor that just wants to see certain stuff, and you could basically make all of those things happen.
It's called Y Combinator. That's a joke. Wow. Ooh, too rough.
It's on the record.
No, here's the thing. The only reason I say that, and I'm joking, is that I see a lot of Y Combinator companies who've been told to have 6 or 8 weeks of traction. And a lot of times when I talk to them, I said, okay, can we dig into this? Where did this come from? And they said, Facebook. I said, oh, how did you work? Oh, they bought ads on Facebook. I'm like, oh, so you bought $100 in ads, $200 in ads, $400. It's sort of manufacturing a chart. And so now VCs have become immune to this.
Right.
So when they see that initial chart, because everybody says at Y Combinator, this is our TAM, and this is our week over week growth. Everybody's like, okay, every single company is growing 20% week over week, and they have a $100 billion, $10 billion TAM or $100 billion TAM.
It's basically chasing the trinkets of success rather than chasing success, right? Like, it's when your number one concern is actually the slides that go in your investment deck and not actually the quality of your business. And there's a lot of companies that are built like that, and it's unfortunate to see.
Well, then the tide comes out, right? And at the end of the day, are people paying for the product and are they using the product? Eventually, every good investor calls up your customers or looks at your data with an associate or whatever. I've sent companies to Chamath over at Social Capital, which is an investor, and they literally put a SaaS company I sent to them, and they ingested their data, and they looked at their churn, and they looked at their revenue, and et cetera, and they put it against Slack and Yammer and other data they had acquired.
And Intercom, I'm sure.
And Intercom, and they didn't tell us the names of the private ones, but they showed the names of the ones that were public, and they just said, that's your company. Do you see this characteristic, these 3 characteristics? It needs to be for us to invest near Intercom, near Slack,
et cetera.
You got to be up here. And they also said to the founder, here's how to get there. Call back when you get it done.
Yeah, totally.
Now the founder got it done with another investor who was like, thanks Chamath for the research. We think they're going to get it done, so
we'll come in.
We'll just come in now and totally. We'll bite the bullet. Which is fine.
Yeah. We went through that whole due diligence with them, and it was really, really, like, we learned so much about our business through that. Like, honestly, we came out of it kind of probably, if anything, more bullish about the strength of our business. But like, because it was the first real.
Raise your valuation.
They were they were our first real investor. Like, they did the deal super quick, like 24 hours, sort of like meeting to term sheet or whatever. But it was interesting. Like, we were like, there's a 2-week period. We're like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? They're gonna talk to all of our customers. What are they gonna learn that we don't already know? Turns out, like, I guess, kind of like nothing is, and we were reasonably well in touch with our customers. They asked for like an export, and they talked to anyone they wanted to talk to, including all the people who'd quit. And so, like, all that serves to remind me of, like, it's like, when you haven't done your homework and your teacher's going to go person to person in the class, and you're like, oh shit. For us, it was like, I'm actually pretty sure we haven't done, like, there's no lies here. If anything, we haven't been strong enough, like, but you can't bullshit, basically. You can get yourself probably a handful of like non-thinking angels and maybe some dumb money, but like, you can't get much further.
Yeah, eventually the truth comes out. Okay, this has been amazing. Again, Des, you brought it. Truly, truly appreciate you take the time. I know you're super busy and you could be selling more customers or meeting with these big customers, but you take the time, and Intercom takes the time to really invest in startups. You have a startup program for, I believe you have a startup program.
We do.
You want to tell everybody what that is, how to get it?
Sure.
Or do they just email you and flood your inbox?
If you email me and flood my inbox, you'll get it. But we have a code. I think it's like Intercom loves launch or something like that. But like, basically, if you're using Intercom and you're not on a launch discount, mail me. You should be. It's whoever runs your coupons. I'm pretty sure they have it, right?
It's a good deal.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's a very good deal, basically.
Yeah, it's a very good deal.
Yeah.
All right, let's hear it for Des. Hey everybody, I just want to thank some of our partners for the Launch Festival. As you know, the Launch Festival is essentially a nonprofit. We run it to help support founders and inspire innovation, and we can only give away 10,000 free tickets and 250 free demo pit tables, as well as have 50 companies launch on stage for free. We can do all this for founders because we have partners, and these partners help pay for the infrastructure of the event, and one of those important partners is Verizon Ventures. They are a VC firm, and they support portfolio companies beyond just giving them funding, and they offer a suite of program and services, and 5 of Verizon's portfolio companies are going to have demo tables at the Launch Festival. So nice of them to support their founders. And they want to meet compelling startups and entrepreneurs in the mobility space and other areas relevant to Verizon Communications. Dave is the director of Verizon Ventures, and he has the main stage judge spot, and they're going to host a VIP lunch at the Launch Festival, which is great, buying people lunch, really like a Menchie thing to do. Mark Smith is an executive director from Verizon Ventures, and he's going to be interviewing Chris Hulls, the founder of Life 360, very successful product, and that's on the AMA stage on Wednesday, March 2nd. You can see all those times, launchfestival.com. And they're going to host a 50-person VIP lunch in the firehouse next to the pavilion at noon on Thursday, March 3rd. Go ahead and follow Verizon Ventures and thank Verizon Ventures for supporting the Launch Festival on Twitter. And you can visit verizonventures.com. Thanks again to my friends at Verizon Ventures for not only investing in great startups, but supporting the Launch Festival, which is where great startups emerge and debut. Thank you so much.